Hi, and welcome to my program on balancing feminine and masculine energies. I am Dr. Tracey Hunter. I'm a psychologist and relationship coach, and I bring all of my experiences to this program to assist you to achieve balance and harmony in your life and in your intimate relationship. I'm really looking forward to bringing this wisdom to you, to a small group of women, as we go through some really important learnings and teachings that will support you in your life. In terms of my own background, I am in a relationship of 6 years with my partner. We live on the Gold Coast and we have a blended family where I have 2 young daughters and he has a son. And a lot of what I'm going to teach you are concepts that I've had to learn from my own coaches in the USA who have helped me and supported me to cultivate my own feminine energy. I have also attended training and workshops with some well-known coaches in this area, including Michaela Bohem, Morgan Day Cecil, and Kim Anami. And these practices and teachings have really supported me to open up to a much deeper level of feminine energy in my life, which has had a massively positive impact on my own relationship with my partner. And I look forward to sharing these wisdoms and insights with you so that you can take what you need from this program and start to apply it in your own life. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Welcome to Module 1, which is an introduction to feminine and masculine energies. Okay, so we're going to be covering 2 main concepts here today. And the first one is understanding the 2 gifts of connection and autonomy, and how these 2 gifts are essential to bring to any intimate relationship. And we're going to understand how often one partner is more focused on connection, one partner is more focused on autonomy, and how we can celebrate both of them. And secondly, this webinar is going to cover understanding how to integrate healthy feminine and healthy masculine energies within us. So I just invite you to take a moment to go back in time into your own childhoods and just remember who you were as a little girl. Can you remember what you were like when you were 8, 10 or 12? Who you were as a little girl is a really important part of this work. We want to connect to ourselves from a time in our lives where we were mostly free of all of the burdens of life, all of the conditioning and all the messages that we were receiving from the outside world about who we should be, how we should act, what's good, what's unacceptable, and all of these negative messages that we get in life. So just take a moment to think back to you as a little girl and see what comes up for you when you think about her, that little girl. Do you have a positive reaction to her? Do you have a negative reaction to her? Do you start to feel anxiety because you don't know how to relate to her? Or do you feel a distance or a disconnection and don't really have a strong sense of her? This is just something for you to consider as we go along in this work, because reconnecting with who we are as a child is a really important part of reconnecting to the feminine. All right, so let's take a look at these 2 energies, feminine and masculine, connection and autonomy. Now, to begin with, feminine energy. This type of energy is guided by the principle of connection. So when you think about the feminine and you think about connection, for you, that could mean just being connected to your heart, connected to your emotions, having a really close relationship within yourself, and really knowing how you feel about everything in life. It could relate to your connections with other people and how safe and secure those connections feel. But feminine energy also includes connection to nature. That feeling that you get when you are amongst the trees or by the ocean or by a river and feeling a nice breeze. All of those aspects are part of the feminine. Feeling really connected to the moon, for example, when it's a full moon, or when the stars are in the sky, or seeing a lovely sunset. All of those are elements of feminine energy. And it could also mean your connection to something greater than yourself, to life itself, to this source of life, or to God, or any aspect of life that you feel energized by or protected by. So feminine energy is concerned with togetherness, with shared experiences, with intimacy, with giving and receiving love and affection. And feminine energy is mostly inwards, and it's receptive and open to life. So there's this sense of not having to be in control, but more so sort of surrendered to whatever is coming up in the moment. And that's a really open and receptive state. The feminine is embodied, which means that it is in our bodies that we feel connected to this feminine energy. So being very much aware of the different sensations in our body moment by moment. And feminine energy is heart-centered. So the center of feminine energy is really in the heart, what it is that we're feeling, how much love or how much lack of love we might be feeling moment by moment, whether we're feeling safe, whether we're feeling excited and delighted by something, or fearful or scared or anxious. This is all variations of feminine energy. All right, so masculine energy, on the other hand, is guided by the principle of freedom and autonomy. So let's have a look at what masculine energy can look like. Masculine energy is more concerned with progress, so sort of moving forwards in life, step by step in a linear way. Masculine energy is more concerned with giving, or maybe serving others, of providing, of using their own strength to go out and provide for the family, for the tribe. It's more focused on protecting, so using physical strength and mental strength to protect the tribe or the partnership from the threats in the outside world. It is more focused around logic and rational decisions, and using opinions and judgments to figure things out and address problems and come up with solutions for them. Masculine energy is more self-directed and independent in its thinking. So it wants to be free from the opinions of others as it formulates its own ideas and opinions and judgments on things, and can sometimes resent being told how to think about something or being made to change their mind. Masculine energy is more out in the world, so there's more of an outward focus, a looking and being observant of the things around them, the problems that need solving, other people, and the demands of the outside world. The masculine is mindful, aware, intelligent, focused, and solid in its presence. And it's more focused on problem solving. Okay, so just by describing feminine and masculine energy, you can really get a sense how both of these qualities are really important for all people to develop. Now, if we have a man that only has cultivated masculine energy, and he is all of these things in this list, and he's focused on work and providing and fixing things and addressing problems all the time, but he hasn't cultivated any of his own sense of connection. So he might not have a lot of pleasure or nourishment in his life. For example, he may not take himself off to do the things that he likes to do, such as go for a surf or hang out with some friends or whatever it is that gives him pleasure. Now, if he is only cultivating masculine energy in his life and no pleasure, then he is going to feel very frustrated and impatient in life because of all the stresses and demands with no relief. And he's also going to project that lack of feminine energy and pleasure in his life onto his female partner, if he's in a relationship with a female, and expect that she will continually bring that source of pleasure and delight and nourishment to him, as opposed to him being responsible for cultivating it himself. Alternatively, if a woman has not cultivated any of her own masculine energy, then she can become extremely dependent on a man to provide the structure, to provide protection from the outside world, to provide financial security. And she may feel like she's unable to do those things herself because she hasn't cultivated her own masculine energy. Now, both of these examples are going to cause problems in intimate relationships because the other partner is going to resent having to bring all of their energy to the table and their partner not taking ownership of their own opposite energy. All right, so let's take a look at the feminine and masculine in relationship. In most romantic relationships, one partner will be naturally drawn towards cultivating the connection principle, and the other more drawn to cultivating the freedom principle. So maybe you can take a moment to really reflect on, what is the gift that you believe that you bring to an intimate relationship? Is it that focus on the connection, on the intimacy, on the closeness, on cultivating a life where you do things together and you share experiences with one another? Or do you identify more as the more masculine partner, the one that feels like you need to be the one bringing in the money and organizing everything and taking charge of everything? And if so, then you're more likely to be attracted to a feminine energy partner. Now, these two energies, when they are balanced within the relationship, create harmony and synergy. And that is what we are working towards in this program here, cultivating harmony and synergy. So let's take a look at what that means. So harmony is when these two opposite energies are able to exist side by side without one energy being more important or valued than the other. Can you imagine that? The feminine and the masculine existing side by side with one another, living in harmony, not having to argue for their own natural way of being, but just respecting the difference in each other and enjoying a sense of harmony and peace, even though these two energies are so opposite in their focus. And synergy. What is synergy? It is when the sum of the parts is bigger than the whole. And that means that the life that the couple can create together is greater than what either partners could create alone using their own feminine and masculine energies. Now, if you're a single woman, and of course, we know how to look after ourselves, to earn an income, to find accommodation, to go get a job, and look after ourselves and have a social life. And for some women, that will be where they want to stop and they enjoy this life of being single and not in a relationship. And that is fine. However, many women want to be in partnership and they want to be actually able to relax deeper into their feminine. Not that they need a man to take care of them or look after them, but that they want to just connect deeper with their own natural essence. Because the deeper they connect with their own natural essence, the more gifts they can bring into the relationship and therefore into life itself. And same with a masculine partner. It's not that, men are not able to also function on their own, not in a relationship. They don't need a woman either. However, many of them will be drawn to relationship because they know that they can cultivate more of their own masculine energy in the presence of a feminine partner. They can go deeper into their masculine, and therefore they can bring more of their masculine gifts into the relationship and also into the world. All right, now I would like to talk you through this really important masculine and feminine trait scale. It's very important to understand what balanced feminine and balanced masculine energies look like so that we know what to cultivate within ourselves and we also know what to celebrate in our partners. Okay, so let's start off on the masculine side of the graph here. So over on the right-hand side, now let's just assume that we're talking about a relationship between a man and a woman. And over on the right-hand side, we have the man. And if he is cultivating a balanced masculine energy within himself, he will exhibit some or all of these traits. So in the balanced masculine column, we have valor, assertion, direction, methodic thought, action, giving, and consciousness. Now, these qualities will be highly attractive to a feminine energy partner because they signal that he is solid and strong, trustable, and also autonomous in how he is approaching life and the world. Obviously, that's very attractive to the feminine because the more balanced he is in his masculine, the more it allows the feminine partner to be in her feminine. Okay, however, let's look at when the masculine partner is off balance. Okay, so if he has not cultivated enough of his own masculine energy, he might be on the extreme right of this graph with insufficient yang or masculine energy. And he may present with some of these traits: fearful, withdrawn, spineless or lost, hopeless, stagnant, stingy, or just dull and unaware. And this can often happen when men have grown up in a family environment where there wasn't a strong father figure. There wasn't a father figure there to really help cultivate balanced masculine qualities in the young boy. And as a result, he has lacked exposure to a strong masculine figure. And he, doesn't bring enough of his own direction into his own life. And therefore, it's hard for him to bring that masculine energy into his relationship with a partner. And then on the left of the balanced masculine, we have excess yang or too much masculine energy. And this occurs when you see men who are highly dominant, aggressive, controlling. They might be very rigid in their mental constructs, having black and white thoughts about things and it's my way or the highway, and this is just how it is. Underneath, it's actually probably driven by anxiety, so too much need for control. And this energy is very forcing and it's very distant. So there's this sort of lack of intimacy. It doesn't feel like they are very present because they are so
overly focused on whatever threats of the outside world they perceive that they are having to conquer. Okay, so you can see how, you know, imbalanced masculine, so not enough masculine or too much masculine, is going to throw the relationship off. Because if a partner doesn't have enough masculine energy, he might trigger his feminine partner to step in and provide the direction and the strength and the problem solving and the lists and the steps and the action taking. And this is not ideal because a feminine partner mostly wants to be in her feminine energy and not in a masculine role. However, if the masculine partner has excess yang or masculine energy and he is too dominant, too aggressive, he's going to create a sense of fear in his partner. And she is going to feel very scared that he might be too critical, that he's going to be too controlling of her. She's going to be on hyper alert a lot of the time around him. And she's going to find it hard to relax into her body and to be open and receptive. And that might push her into a more helpless or passive end of the scale. All right, so now let's move over to looking at the feminine and what balanced feminine looks like. Okay, so over on the left-hand side in the balanced feminine list, we have these qualities. And these are the qualities that I believe are ideal to cultivate in this program. So this is what we will be looking at, whatever is blocking us from cultivating these qualities in ourselves. So they include compassion, introspection, being in a flow, being tuned into our own wisdom or intuition, having patience, being receptive, and tapped into creativity. So these are all feminine qualities or traits that ideally we want to be cultivating in our own lives because they are our natural state of being. But also they lead us to give the gifts in our intimate relationships, because just this state of being itself is very nourishing to a masculine partner. Okay, let's have a look at what happens when the feminine is imbalanced. So when there's insufficient yin or insufficient feminine energy, it might appear like this. A woman might find that she becomes smothering, only outward in her focus, rigid in her behaviors and ideas, is overthinking a lot of the time, nervous, frigid or cold, or dry and blocked. So there's not a lot of life energy moving through her body. She might find that she spends a lot of time in her head, overthinking, feeling like she has to be in control or in charge all of the time, and very future focused and thinking ahead, as opposed to being more present and embodied. And this was certainly the lack of balance that I had to address in myself, you know, with all of this sort of overthinking, being highly in my head, feeling like I had to be in charge all of the time. Okay, and so then what happens when there's excess yin or excess feminine energy, which is kind of drowning out any signs of masculine energy? Okay, and what we see at the far left of this graph is, you know, signs of martyrdom or depression, feeling spacey, a lot of confusion, feeling stagnant in life, often feeling needy, and often wallowing in negative emotional states like helplessness or fear or victimhood and things like that. Now, when this is going on, it is a sign that the woman needs to strengthen and develop more masculine energy or activate her own masculine energy so that she is an autonomous being, so that she comes into the relationship as a solo, independent person who is available for connection without necessarily needing a masculine partner to survive in life. All right, so let's have a look at ways that we can cultivate more of this balanced feminine energy. Okay, so remember we are aiming for the middle column here, the middle ground, balanced feminine, all of these qualities of compassion, introspection, flow, wisdom, intuition, patience, receptive, and creativity. Okay, how can we do that? Well, if you identify with being excess yin, too much feminine energy, not enough of your own inner masculine, then you will want to strengthen from inside. Okay, and how do we strengthen? How do we cultivate our own masculine energy? This is how we do it. Firstly, we learn to self-validate. So any emotions that we feel, and our partner might dismiss them and say, oh, you're, exaggerating, or it's not such a big deal, or are you crazy? Why do you feel that way? When we are faced with that invalidating response, we double down on our own self-validation. So we remind ourselves that how we feel is true and right, and that we trust our own emotions. And even if in this moment our partner is not validating how we feel, we are not reliant on them validating our feelings in order to know that how we feel is true. So you can see how this is actually an autonomous sort of practice here. We're not reliant on our partners being like a good parent, and a good parent would soothe and validate and say, oh yes, I can see how you feel that way. Now, masculine partners are typically not very good at validating emotions. That is what we bring. That's our gift. We are the more heart-centered partner typically. They tend to be more logical and linear and rational, and sometimes dismissive of emotions. So we want to be able to self-validate. And if we don't self-validate, we might just fall to pieces in the face of our emotions being invalidated by a partner. And this is going to create all sorts of imbalances in the relationship. All right, how else do we strengthen? We set boundaries, not just once and not just twice, but again and again and again. We set boundaries until our message has gotten across. So if you don't like being criticized in your relationship, and I know I don't, then I set a boundary on that whenever it happens. And I do it every time it happens, and I do it over and over again. And I did it early in my relationship, and then my partner really started to respect that boundary and be very cautious of the way that he spoke to me, very mindful. And then a year later, he would forget, and I would set the boundary again. I would remind him that I didn't want to be in a relationship where we criticized one another. So boundaries need to be set again and again and again until they're not needed. And you might find that you have different boundaries at the beginning of a relationship that you're able to relax later on as the relationship becomes more secure. So for example, in the early stages of a relationship, you might find it very uncomfortable when your partner openly speaks to other women in front of you without introducing you to that woman or including you in the conversation. So you might have a boundary that, you feel uncomfortable about that. And in the early stages of your relationship, you would prefer that he makes an effort to include you in the conversation or to tell you who the person is. Now that may be a boundary that you relax on 3 or 4 years later on when you feel more secure in the relationship. So the point is that boundaries change as we progress in our relationships, and a boundary that we have early on may not need to be set through the whole period of the relationship. Okay, to strengthen, we want to learn relational assertiveness, which is heart connected. So, what I mean by relational assertiveness is it's being assertive about how we feel and how important it is for our partners to take on board our feelings, as opposed to assertiveness that you might see in the boardroom or in a business meeting or at work. So a relational assertiveness might sound something like, um, I really want you to take on board how I feel. I felt really uncomfortable when you spoke to me in that way, and it hurt me, and I was feeling sad for quite some time after that. So you can see how that's very relational. It's not just purely autonomous. It's not just purely about me and my view on things and my needs. It's actually to benefit the relationship, to benefit both of you, so that your partner can learn what makes you feel upset and can adjust the way that they behave around you. And that's relational assertiveness. Okay, another thing to strengthen if you are too high on feminine energy, not enough of your own masculine energy, is to overcome abandonment fears. Okay, and I know that this is easier said than done, but overcoming your fears of being abandoned is going to have a huge impact on the way that you show up in your relationship. If you are so fearful of a partner breaking up with you, then you will be very reluctant to assert yourself and set boundaries or say no, and you may become more willing to tolerate poor treatment in a relationship because you would rather be treated poorly than be abandoned. Okay, so the healing for abandonment is to develop your own inner sense of security and stability. You have to be able to find ways of feeling secure and stable within your own being. Okay, you also will want to develop financial independence and security, obviously. So part of developing our own masculine energy is knowing that we can look after ourselves, we can pay our own way, that if we needed to leave a relationship and find new accommodation, and have our own budget and figure out how to face life problems and get through life, then we need to really have a sense of financial independence. And without knowing how to pay our own way through life, it just puts us in a more vulnerable position where a masculine partner could see an opening there to come along with all of his money and use that as a tool or a weapon in a relationship. And this is not ideal if a woman ever feels that she couldn't survive if she wasn't in a relationship, because it opens her up to all sorts of abuse and power plays. Okay, also to strengthen, to develop and cultivate more of our own masculine energy, we want to cultivate connections outside the relationship. So that shows that we are able to form relationships with others, that our entire connection does not just come from our intimate relationship, that we are sort of out there in the world and not just enmeshed with a partner. Okay, so they are some of the examples of how to strengthen. Okay, let's have a look on the opposite side. If you identify with not being connected enough to feminine energy, then your work is to soften. Okay, and how do we do that? Well, firstly, we want to be able to validate both ourselves as well as our partner's perspective. So we may be quite low on having compassion for our partner. We may have developed a mindset that our partner is the bad one or always in the wrong, and we might have developed a lot of frustrated beliefs towards our partner. So to soften, we want to start to cultivate more compassion towards them, to start seeing them as a human being also, with their own flaws and insecurities and struggles, And then we can really start to open our hearts towards our partner when we can take the most generous assumption of them, as opposed to a hostile assumption of their intentions. How else do we soften? We learn to soothe anxiety and worry, and how to go inwards in our body and our heart, and less in our head. So if you are prone to anxiety or overthinking, you may find that you spend a lot of time thinking about all the things that could go wrong in your mind. And this gets you actually out of your body and brings all of the energy up here into your mind. And then we can kind of be really taken away from the present moment. And our focus is on either the outside world, work problems, or the future. And to soften, we want to be able to soothe our mind, reassure ourselves that all of those future issues will be dealt with in good time, so that we can drop back into our body and into our heart, and less in our head. Now, the more we are in our body, the more receptive we are and open to connection and intimacy with a partner. The more in our heads we are, the more distant we are and not available for connection. Okay, also to soften, we want to learn how to surrender having to be in control of everything. Okay, another one that's easier said than done. If you've spent a lifetime of being in control of everything, and being the boss or being in charge or being the most competent one in the family and also in your relationships, you might struggle a little bit to give up some of this control and to surrender. However, if you want to attract a balanced masculine partner into your life, or you want to bring out more balanced masculine energy in your own partner, you will want to learn how to practice trusting in his direction, trusting in his leadership, having the overall belief that he's got this, and that he is taking the two of you to a good place, and that you don't need to micromanage everything. Now, if you find it hard to trust that your partner has that direction, it may be something that you really need to look at and face, and decide for yourself whether you are with a partner who you believe is trustable and competent, or whether you feel like you bring more masculine energy than he does, in which case it's going to be very difficult for you to cultivate feminine energy in that relationship. Okay, so part of this is learning to receive and be supported by the masculine. So a lot of women have a mistrust in the masculine, and for good reason, because there's been centuries and centuries of being betrayed by the masculine. But we live in a time where people are becoming more conscious. Men are good and women are good deep down. And we need to be able to cultivate this trust and faith that the masculine partner that we've chosen wants to support us. And if we find it hard to trust that they support us, then it's going to be, very difficult to relax into your own feminine energy. Okay, and the last point on softening is to learn how to express delight through your body. Right, so the more in your body you are, more heart connected, you're moving at a fairly slow pace in your life, and this is hard for modern women because our pace is quite busy and rushed. But when you start to recognize the importance of slowing down the pace, then you start to feel more in your body and relaxed, and you have that sense of safety, and the parasympathetic nervous system is operating, which is signaling that life is safe, and it's time to play and have fun and experience delight. And the more we're able to do that in our own individual lives, the more we have available to bring that back into our relationship. And just the way we move when we are connected to our body, is sometimes enough to draw the masculine closer to us. They want to be around that kind of energy. They don't move in the same way that we do. And they are attracted to that expression of delight and joy that we feel in our own bodies. Okay, so we're going to be talking about all the different ways that we can cultivate more balanced feminine energy in this program. So don't worry if you haven't mastered it yet. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is, how do we integrate all of this? How do we integrate both healthy feminine and healthy masculine energies? I've got 4 points I want to share with you. The first is that you must know and embrace your natural essence. You must know if you are a mostly feminine or mostly masculine partner. You know, being confused about whether you're feminine or masculine in your essence is going to cause some imbalances in your relationship. So it's really helpful to know, you know, what you bring to your relationship. Also, you must know and celebrate your partner's opposite essence. So if you identify as being a feminine essence partner, you will need to know that your partner is masculine in his essence and celebrate that and honor that to a degree. You know, we don't want to cause our partners to become more like us. We don't want to neutralize them. We don't want to make them into empathic creatures who are always talking about feelings, because we are, you know, perfectly capable of bringing that energy ourselves. We don't need another version of ourselves. We want to celebrate our masculine partners for their autonomy and for their drive towards freedom, because that will benefit the relationship, this polarity. Okay, you also cultivate enough of the opposite energy, in this case, masculine, to rely on your own autonomy and not see your partner as the sole provider of masculine energy. So we need to just be able to locate and feel and sense the masculine within us. And I like to say that it's located in the solar plexus. So somewhere in the belly, there's this sort of power center at our core where we feel strong and competent and capable. And we know that we can draw from this sort of fire in our belly whenever we need to solve problems or address threats in the outside world. And then finally, 4, you commit to a lifetime of healing, deepening, and cultivating your own natural feminine essence as the gift that you bring to the relationship. Okay, so I'm going to break this down just a little bit more. The first point of integrating healthy feminine and healthy masculine energies is you must know and embrace your natural essence. So one way you can do that is ask yourself, what was your essence as a child? You know, when you look back on your childhood, can you see that you identified as being more feminine or more masculine in your energy? What you can do is you can think about this. When you thought of being in love or in partnership one day in the future, when you dreamed of, you know, maybe getting married or something like that, did you imagine being the feminine or the masculine partner? In other words, did you feel driven to pursue and claim a delightful partner, which is masculine? Or did you feel driven to be the delightful partner, which is feminine? And this is a nice, easy way to figure out, you know, where you fall. Also, were there any negative messages you got about being female or feminine or a woman from your family experiences? So negative messages could have been either direct or indirect. You know, if you were behaving in a way where you're expressing the feminine, such as expressing your emotions, how you felt, or even expressing joy and delight in your body, such as dressing up and being playful and sassy, did you get any negative messages from caregivers or parents about that being unacceptable or wrong or bad in some way or shameful? Or did it happen more indirectly, where you observed your own mother who appeared to have difficulties expressing her own feminine? So was she always sacrificing herself and her needs? Did she not take time for her own pleasure and joy and delight? Did she suppress her own emotions in her relationship? And all of these can influence the wounds that we have as being a feminine energy person. And they need healing. And this is the program where we're going to be talking about healing those. Okay, point number 2 on integrating healthy feminine and healthy masculine energies is that you must know and celebrate your partner's opposite essence. So if you recognize that your partner is masculine in their essence, then you will want to be celebrating the fact that they are driven towards freedom and autonomy. Now, this is really hard sometimes for women because we like closeness and we like togetherness, but our masculine partners want to be able to spend time on their own, solving problems, fixing things, figuring things out, and they don't always want to be affected or influenced by relationship. And this is a really, ingrained biological drive, because it allows them to go out and solve problems in the world and ensure that the relationship and the tribe and the family is protected. And to do that, they need to be in their own heads, figuring out solutions, using rational thinking. And sometimes to do that, they will want to take time to themselves and be away from the relationship, such as spending time with other men, for example. And ideally, we want to be able to celebrate that aspect of them. Otherwise, we may become smothering or demand that they only spend time with us. So to celebrate the masculine, we need to look at whether anything about the masculine has been used against you before, or felt threatening, or was used as a power tool against you, because that will influence the degree to which you trust the masculine, the degree to which you feel safe that the masculine's seeking of freedom and autonomy is not actually a threat to you. So what negative beliefs do you have about the masculine that you may need to release if you are to let the masculine in your intimate relationship? Okay, because ideally in intimacy, the woman is feeling fairly relaxed in her body, receptive and welcoming of the masculine, who is going to be pursuing you and, wanting to claim you and initiate connection with you. But we need to be trusting of that masculine force and pretty much relax our bodies if we are to allow the masculine to penetrate us. So we need to really look at any negative beliefs that has us want to push the masculine away, want to sort of armor ourselves or protect ourselves, or creates tension in our bodies. Okay, the third point in integrating healthy feminine and healthy masculine energies is that you cultivate enough of the opposite energy, masculine, to rely on your own autonomy and not see your partner as the sole owner of masculine energy, right? And, all people, men and women, must cultivate a certain degree of both energies within themselves to thrive in life. And a woman with balanced feminine energy will feel strong on the inside, but is soft on the outside. So I really love this, because our strength is a private, personal experience that we draw from. We don't really need to put it out there and tell everyone how independent and how strong we are. We just need to know that we can cultivate it within ourselves. and draw from it whenever we might need it. But ultimately, if we're wanting to have a healthy, intimate relationship with a partner, we are mostly soft on the outside, and that is feminine in nature. So we're approachable, warm, wanting to maybe touch or hug our partners, and open for connection wherever possible. Okay, so too little masculine energies. Some women have grown up without healthy masculine traits modeled to them. And there may have been a lack of assertiveness modeled to her, or lack of boundaries. And, these things were not modeled or encouraged in the young girl. So she wasn't shown how to be assertive. She wasn't shown how to cultivate her own masculine energy and be assertive. And she didn't feel that she had permission to stand up for herself or to have a voice. Women who identify with having too little masculine will feel powerless, lost, weak, and helpless in their relationships and in life, and will sometimes fall prey to dominant or controlling partners. They may often feel victimized by men and consumed by fear or resentment towards a partner or towards men in general. Okay, so if that's the case, we're wanting to strengthen. Too little feminine. Some women have grown up in families where masculine traits were overvalued or reinforced and celebrated, while feminine traits were scoffed at. So in this case, you might have heard, you are so strong and independent, you don't need a man, you can achieve anything. And that may have either been communicated directly to the little girl, or the little girl may have observed her mother being very low on masculine energy and not having enough of her own inner strength, and may have been abused or walked all over, and made a decision very early on in life that she wasn't going to be like her mother. So she went to the opposite end of the scale, which was to become overly reliant on masculine traits and being autonomous and doing things on her own. When we have too little feminine energy, we can easily get drawn into logical arguments with a partner all the time. It might even feel like a court of law. Or we might lean too heavily on our logic and intellect at the expense of joy, nurturance, and warmth. So if this is the case, we want to really cultivate the soften principles. Okay, so the fourth step in integrating healthy feminine and healthy masculine energies is that we commit to a lifetime of healing, deepening, and cultivating our own natural feminine essence. And we do that by becoming highly attuned to our heart's feelings, accepting that all of our emotions are intertwined with the feminine essence in you. So we don't reject any of our emotions, we accept all of our feelings, and we just appreciate that this is the feminine in us that is communicating through us. We also get good at embracing and celebrating that you are the more emotional partner with immediate connection to your heart and to the relationship at all times. So we really want to take ownership of the fact that the feminine partner is going to be the one who has the finger on the pulse when it comes to how the relationship feels, and is more sensitive to the quality of the connection at any given time. And that is because the feminine partner is more inwards, more connected to the heart, to the body, and therefore more sensing how things feel at that relational level, moment by moment. We also want to cultivate this by becoming more willing to reveal what is in your heart in a way that invites more connection, empathy, compassion, and unity. And a lot of women are very scared to reveal how they feel in their relationship because they've spent a lifetime having their emotions dismissed or ridiculed or belittled or ignored. So it can feel very scary to start to open up and reveal how we feel in a very vulnerable way. However, there's no getting around this. This is the work of the feminine, is to reveal how she feels, because it invites a partner into her world, into the world of the feminine, and a partner can learn the importance of empathy and softness and togetherness because of her connection to the heart. Also, by practicing being embodied, by becoming more sensitive to the sensations in your body. And it's almost impossible to do that if you spend 100% of the time in your head thinking, doing things, getting through task lists, picking up children and then taking them home and getting them ready for dinner and bed and then going to work. And if there's not a moment of space in there to drop into your body, then it's very hard for you to have sensations of, what you feel in your body. So consciously practicing dropping out of your head and into your body and into your heart when you're in the presence of your partner. And finally, appreciating your partner's masculine energy. So their presence, their autonomy, their direction, and celebrating this and really showing your appreciation for this, while stepping into your feminine leadership in the relational domain. So being a feminine energy partner is not passive or submissive by any means. It is owning your leadership position when it comes to all matters of the heart, and allowing your partner to have a leadership position when it comes to tackling problems in the outside world. Now, that is not to say that you won't have your own goals and direction in life. And that is something that I encourage you to do for your own enjoyment. So if you have a career, then that is something that you do because it gives you joy and it is in line with your own purpose in life. But appreciate that your masculine partner will also have their own goals, and that will be very much at the core of who they are, is feeling that they are free to pursue their own direction in life. All right, so that brings us to the end of module 1. And what we have next is a video on home practices that will really help you to cultivate some of the concepts that I've spoken about in this video.